I'm now at the Airofit headquarters here in Copenhagen with Mike Bennett, the head of partnerships and science here at Airofit.
Yes, correct.
And I'm gonna ask him a bunch of questions to fully understand, and I know a lot of you guys are curious about that, understand how we go from breathing in and out through a device, the Airofit, and how that's actually gonna make us better at sports. As you know, I've been using the Airofit for a total of 3, almost 4 years, leading into 2 Olympic Games. I think I broke all my national records, qualified for the games, won all my medals basically, while I was using the Airofit. I know that it does make me a better athlete. I can track the progress through the app. Obviously my lung capacity has, increased more than I would expect. The inhale, exhale strength. And ultimately I got better on the bike, better at skating. But today I want you to explain, how is that? Like what is the actual reason that makes you a better athlete?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess a lot of your followers and yourself will kind of know the feeling of improving, but not sure why. So I think the easiest way to tackle this would be you kind of explain a situation you felt better, and then I can break it down through the device, how it helped and stuff like that.
And that is the hard thing, like you just said, you feel that you improve.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like I can use skating as an example, that every year is like, oh, I chopped a few seconds off this distance. Why is that? Is that because I started using these supplements? Is because I biked in a different ways? Because I did different sorts of weightlifting? And I feel like the Airofit and lung training is almost like that in its own little world. Like, is that because I did these different programs? Is it because I got better mentally at breathing? Yeah. Or is it because my muscle, like the breathing muscles, got stronger? So the first of them would probably be, if we just look at the very specific improvements, what is it that that increases your lung capacity?
Yeah, so we really touch on kind of 3 dynamics of respiratory health, we like to call it here at Airofit. The first is being the strength of the respiratory system. So you mentioned that we measure how strong your lungs are, and you have seen that improvement. So by increasing the strength of the diaphragm and the other musculature involved in breathing, you're going to learn how to pull your lungs open more, which will increase the flexibility. So that's where the second pillar comes in, or the second area, which is the capacity. A lot of us are shallow breathers. They're only breathing up in their upper shoulders and not accessing their full diaphragm. By doing this through correct breathing technique, you're actually going to open your lungs up more, and then you're going to learn how to regulate your breath a lot more.
Okay.
So long story short, make your lungs stronger, open them up more, and control breathing.
Okay, so it's a mix of those 3 basically.
Yeah, correct.
The control, the full use of them, and the strength.
Yeah. It's just like if you're learning to squat for the first time, your range of motion is going to be terrible. You're not going to be strong. But over time, just doing 5 to 10 minutes a day could actually make you a stronger, better squatter.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Then the second thing I was curious about, where I could measure a difference also, is my FTPs, my threshold values on the bicycle. Those of you that follow me know that I bike a ton, about 15, 20 hours per week. So for me, making a big jump in wattage here is pretty huge. And I want to understand, which of these things is it that you believe transfer into this FTP or threshold improvement? The way I felt, it was just that it was a little more calm. I was more relaxed, but not sure why exactly that is.
Yeah, so a lot of this comes down to a phenomenon called the metabolic reflux. Are you aware of that term?
No.
Yeah, so essentially what that indicates is when your respiratory muscles are a lot more kind of efficient, they don't require as much oxygenated blood. So when you're pushing on the bike, you have 100% oxygen. And as you fatigue, the demand on your lungs gets higher because it needs to keep you alive. Yeah. And your body would be like, we need this here rather than in your legs. So if you're more efficient, it kind of balances out, so then you can actually press longer and get more oxygenated blood into your legs.
That makes a lot of sense.
So I really love using the analogy, like if you're biking or running uphill, it's going to be a lot easier on flat ground. Yeah. So Airofit is essentially like breathing uphill to become easier on flat ground.
I like that analogy. Yeah. Makes the Airofit training sound really hard.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. Like in simplified terms, it's really that you get stronger lungs, or you get better at using them, and that means that you steal less energy from what allows you to go faster on a bike, for example.
Yeah, exactly. The blood can go where it matters most.
The next thing, as you know, I'm wearing this little Whoop thing. So I track actually track a lot of different devices, but track my sleep.
Yeah.
And that is a thing where I found a pretty significant change in both resting heart rate, HRV, especially resting, it's called like respiratory rate.
Yep.
That my breathing is way more relaxed when I sleep. But especially the HRV, also resting heart rate, they just find very interesting how they have improved, which I guess because you're not breathing with your full lung strength at night, and you're definitely not conscious how you're breathing at night. So what's the reason behind this?
So HRV, or heart rate variability, is actually the like indicator of how resilient you are to stress. And stress plays a massive dictatorship into your breathing. So if you're breathing very fast, you're going to build up that carbon dioxide, and you're going to become in a more stressful state. So you've probably heard of rest and digest and fight and flight.
Yeah.
By activating what we call the parasympathetic nervous system through deeper, slower breathing, you're going to be more in the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest. So your body is in a more relaxed state, allowing you to deeper, slower breathing. Your HRV is going to skyrocket. So misconception about HRV. Higher HRV is a good thing.
Yeah.
Respiratory rate, lower one's better.
HRV is really the number one number that we look at with my coach in the morning before a training session to see how deep I can dig, because skating is a very coordination related sport.
Yeah.
So when my coordination, when my movement patterns or timing of the strokes is on point, we dig really deep at practice. But so the HRV is a very important number.
Yeah, for sure. And like you'll obviously see, like if you've had a very heavy training session the day before, your HRV might be a bit lower.
Yeah.
This is because your stress regulation's kind of fluctuating a lot, whereas if you breathe Airofit, down-regulate, open your lungs and activate the vagal nerve, which is the main nerve around the relaxation, you're really going to get into a deeper sleep and increase the HRV.
That you're better at relaxing.
Yeah.
Like your recovery relaxed mode becomes even more relaxed.
Exactly. It's kind of like a life hack into getting into a relaxation state.
The next thing I was wondering about here is, this is not a thing I've been able to track, but I heard from my wife Sophia that I snore less. Is that an actual thing with the Airofit?
Yeah, so depending on why you snore, if it's kind of a physical barrier, not necessarily, you'll stop snoring. But one thing a lot of people do is either they have minor sleep apnea, which is the collapsing of the respiratory tract. So down your throat into your lungs, it's kind of like a loose tube.
Yeah.
And as you sleep, it might fluctuate, which causes you to snore or make noises. But if you strengthen the musculature around it, it becomes a lot more rigid. So it goes from like a garden hose to a vacuum pipe. So then it's not going to collapse. And then the other one is the soft palate at the back of your oral cavity into your nasal cavity. If this flaps a bit because it's not very strong, you're going to start grunting, snoring. But if you can control that and breathe through your nose while you're sleeping, you're really going to reduce that snoring and keep happy wife, happy life.
So if you have an annoying partner out there, here's a great birthday, Christmas gift idea. The next thing I was wondering about was the sports where you're in an uncomfortable position. I have noticed I do a lot of different sports. I mean, skating is my profession, but like I mentioned, I bike a ton. I do run a lot. I swim for recovery. And then we do these very awkward exercises on shoes where we try and imitate skating.
Yeah.
And I just noticed in general, breathing is harder when you're in a, crunched position, obviously. It's uncomfortable. Nobody would do their Airofit training sitting like in that position. But those are also the sports where I feel like the Airofit makes the biggest difference.
Yeah.
You said a little bit about that. You learn to expand the lungs. How much of that would you say carry over into these weird sports, the uncomfortable position sports?
So we see it a lot in like time trials of cyclists, people and kind of even speed skating to some extent when you're hunched over.
Yeah.
People learn how to breathe through their full diaphragm. Your diaphragm is a 360-degree muscle, meaning it goes from back right round to the front. And most people belly breathe or just breathe through the front.
So that's compromised.
So when you're sitting like this, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to breathe through your back, which is opening up the musculature around your back and pulling the air in. So that's where that benefit really comes from, is activating the entire muscle.
Yeah.
And then you also mentioned swimming. So swimming's kind of a different kettle of fish, excuse the pun. But you're pushing out air against a resistance or water. Water's around 830 times more dense than air. So every time you're blowing out, you're really working that muscles, and if it's not efficient, if you're not strong, you tire very fast. And then you turn your head and you suck air in, you only have a few seconds to breathe in a lot of air. And if you're stronger, you can really open the lungs up, get that air in, and then get your head back underwater.
I see.
So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, becoming a stronger, better breather.
Yeah.
So we use the term better breathing a lot here. And what that comes down to is opening your lungs up through the front, through the back, and being stronger, which is going to increase that performance.
That actually, my last question, I realize now that you kind of answered a little between all of these questions, was that how come there's so many different training sessions in the Airofit? If you already have the device, if you use the app, you will notice that there's so many different ways of training your lungs. And my first was like, why wouldn't you just, breathe in, breathe out, kind of?
Yeah.
But I realized with everything you say here, that you're describing, like these things like this, is very different from the one where you just inhale as hard as you can. There's some of them where it's like a slow control pattern where you really...
Yeah, so what we did is we looked at kind of what's out there for respiratory muscle training as well as breathing exercises, because everyone's known for hundreds of years about yoga, so the controlling of the breathing and how that dictates. So we kind of looked at physiological demands of sport, and that kind of allowed us to understand more of breathing patterns and how, for example, apnea or a breath hold actually regulates your vagal nerve a lot more, or it can put you in a stressful situation. So it's about manipulating the breath to give you the best results, whether that's strengthening or controlling the breath.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. So taking kind of the whole world of breathing, and with the app you mentioned, it can really kind of understand you as a person and find where you're weak.
Yeah.
So for my personal experience, I was very strong at exhalation, but my inhalation was terrible.
Yeah.
And over time, I've built that up, so I'm more of a balanced breather.
Yeah.
I've really noticed that in swimming. So when I turn my head, I can breathe in faster, I can get more air in.
Yeah, swimming is really one where you can feel the difference right away.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm out there on my bike, it hurts the same. Using the Airofit or not, you can't feel the difference. You look at the speed, you look at the wattage, there's where you find it, but it's not going to get easier. Where swimming is really like a noticeable, it's actually more comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. And then if you're kind of more comfortable swimming, you can just push through, get that longer duration, and you're not kind of sucking air for your life.
Yeah, it's not a survival sport anymore.
Yeah.
I just want to mention to everybody out there, now we went through all these different training sessions. In the app, when you use the Airofit, it's not just going to be a maze of things. It's going to guide you toward, like you can even choose, speed skating is a niche sport. You can choose speed skating. You can also, of course, choose running, cycling. I think there's 22, if I remember correctly, 22 different
focus areas.
Yeah, so it's not just going to be your job to figure out what you need to train. It is there to help.
And that's also not only in sporting domains as well. There is that well-being where it looks at recovery, sleeping and everything around that. So it's not only hitting that sporting target, but also if you want to learn how to down-regulate and sleep better. Like you mentioned, it's help your sleep. There are specific programs for sleeping.
Well, dang. I should work on that. And this is also a great little motivational boost to all of you out there. We talk about this, that this helps me a little bit in elite sports. A little bit means the world in elite sports. But if you are, like I train my lungs on a daily basis when I do sports, this is just going to improve that top of the bit that takes me from really good skater to one of the absolute best skaters. For the people out there not doing elite sports, we're talking about much bigger steps, I would imagine.
For sure. It'd be like if me and you trained for 6 months of speed skating. I'd improve dramatically. Very fast. You, maybe 1 second.
But that makes a big difference.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot for joining my little YouTube channel here.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. If you got excited about the Airofit, then if you click in the description below, there's going to be a link with a little discount.
Yes.
Thanks Airofit for that. And thanks a lot for watching.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
See you for next video.
Perfect.
Airofit gave me an exclusive opportunity to sell these two models with a 25% discount. They're limited editions. There's the sand color and the green color. Click on the link in my bio, hop on the website, and get yourself an Airofit and join me and thousands of other athletes in a journey to improve performance and get healthier lungs.
Yeah.